pandemic, or the 100 for that matter. The lockdown that began in March 2020 eventually drove me to the laptop, and I had ample time to return there at the end of the year during the third lockdown. There was nowhere to go and not much to do. Soon after the start of the first lockdown, I was asked to keep a very brief fortnightly diary. On the 3rd of April, I noted, "The novelty of the lockdown soon wore off, as did the determination to read Shakespeare, Dickens, and Joyce. Within a week, all the fine ideas of self-improvement slithered away as a new routine evolved. Initially, I became a news junkie, soaking up every detail. For a few days, those 5 p.m. press conferences from Downing Street became compulsory viewing. But enthusiasm for that did not last long either, as the passing on of vital guidance and information was increasingly replaced by barely concealed attempts to justify the handling of the problem. I added that the 2020 edition of Wisden, published later this week, will not mention the disease because it erupted too late to be included. The glorious cricketing summer of 2019 is therefore unsullied. I decided that I would be better off turning my mind to something I knew about, in an attempt to escape the deepening gloom that was evident from an entry of the 2nd of May. What is clear, and this may be a surprise to some of the arch Brexiteers, is that we are no better and arguably worse at dealing with this pandemic than our European neighbours, despite the wisdom of Chris Whitty, the one I instinctively trust whenever I watch those afternoon press conferences. So, during that lockdown, I started writing about cricket and not COVID, though I was briefly taken by the title COVID's Metamorphoses. After 6 decades consumed by the game, this was my specialist subject. Whether what follows turns out to be therapy for me or entertainment for you remains to be seen. To achieve both outcomes would be a bonus. Initially, it looked as if there would be no cricket at all in the summer of 2020, so there would be plenty of time to contemplate various aspects of the game and to write about them. But then the ECB, despite its self-destructive obsession with the 100, reacted with a rare mix of flexibility and creativity that was in stark contrast to their attempts to woo women and children to their wondrous new competition. They undertook to deliver international cricket behind closed doors with Steve Elworthy, who had overseen what now seemed like the straightforward task of organising a 50-over World Cup in 2019, to the fore. First and foremost, the ECB needed the money from their lucrative TV deal to diminish the size of the losses caused by the pandemic. But there was also the nobler urgency to keep the game alive. And they did it. They had to overcome a range of unprecedented obstacles, which began with persuading the government and the touring teams that cricket was safe and feasible behind closed doors. There was no cricket anywhere in the country until the 2nd week of July, which left us correspondents endlessly debating whether it would ever happen and whether it would be worthwhile if it did. We rarely bothered to consider what might constitute England's best bowling attack or who should open the batting, since such topics seemed of secondary importance, and maybe there was no point in giving any attention to such minutiae anyway. There might be too many hurdles to overcome for any cricket to take place. Suddenly, being a cricket correspondent had become a solitary profession. There were no press boxes to inhabit, no gossip, no random cricket chat. In fact, in the summer of 2020, I did not see any of my writing colleagues until the 8th of September, at the first T20 fixture against Australia in Southampton. When attending test matches or ODIs before then, I was in a different bubble, the broadcaster's inner bubble rather than the outer one occupied by the writers, and under no circumstances were we allowed to mingle. However, when the test series against the West Indies began on 8th of July 2020, I was on my sofa. The cricket was on the television, and this was the only way to watch it, except for 100 or so workers at the AGS Bowl, the out-of-town home of Hampshire Cricket Club. I settled down with a coffee and